Fox DIYs. In this video, I'm going to share 5 fall DIYs with you using wood. This video is part of a collaboration called What Would You Make? The hosts of the What Would You Make collaboration are Brenda from Rustic and Lace DIY and Christine from DeVyne DeZynz. This month's guest host is Whitney from Crafty Thoughts and Whatnot. So after you watch this video, be sure to check in the description for the playlist so that you can watch all of the videos for the What Would You Make collaboration. Okay, let's get into it. For this first project, I am making a sign that says fall. I am going to take these scrap pieces of 2x4 and I'm going to paint them like pumpkins and apples. I'm painting this first board that is going to be the base board in the color raw umber. I'm going to paint the apples in the color scarlet red and the pumpkins in the color orange yellow. All of the paints that I'm using for this project are by Fantastory. Now I'm going in with the scarlet red to paint my apple pumpkin, or my my piece of wood that I'm using for an apple. I made my apples be short and fat, and the pumpkin ones were going to be tall and skinny. So I'm just going to give each of these a really good paint. The Fantastory paint is thicker, so I find that I usually only need one coat of paint with the Fantastory paint. It's acrylic paint, but it's still a little thicker than, say, like apple barrel. I decided to go with the color orange yellow for my pumpkins because I felt like a regular pumpkin orange would clash against the red, and I think that the yellow orange looks better. Now I'm going to use these stencils to spell out the word fall. You could also do this by hand, or you could use vinyl. The choice is yours, however you want to do it. Now the color that I am using for my letters is also raw umber. I'm just going to use a stencil brush to pounce up and down. These stencils were made to look like Scrabble pieces, so there's a little number on the side next to the letter. So I have to be careful to make sure that I don't accidentally hit that number because I don't want the number on my pumpkins and apples. So then after I get that done, then I'm going to just kind of dry brush some of the raw umber on the edges of the apples and the pumpkins just to distress them a little bit and give them, a little bit of character. Then I'm going to make sure it's good and dry using my hair dryer, and then I'm going to take a piece of sandpaper and I'm going to just soften up that a little bit. Now it's time to adhere my pumpkins and apples to my base, and I'm going to use some Fix-All and hot glue. Now you could certainly use wood glue if you want to, but Fix-All was the kind of glue that I had on hand, and I wanted something with more of a permanent hold than hot glue, so that's why I chose to use the two. And then I just use the glue, like I said, to adhere it to the base. Now I'm going to use a cinnamon stick to make the stem on my apples, and I'm going to just use a stick from my yard to make the stem on the pumpkins. So I just get the size that I want, and then I just use hot glue to adhere the cinnamon sticks and the stick to the tops of my pumpkins and apples. I'm also going to embellish my apples and pumpkins using leaves. I didn't have the shape of leaves that I wanted for my apples, so I just took some other leaves and cut them to shape, and then just use hot glue to secure the leaves onto my apples. With the pumpkins, I didn't have exactly a color that I really liked, so I just chose some orange looking leaves, and then I took some of the raw umber on a round sponge brush and then just dabbed some of the paint on there, so that way they were kind of brownish. I wanted some leaves that were kind of brownish, so that's the way that I got those leaves the way I wanted. Then I just took my hair dryer and dried the paint on the leaves so that they were nice and set. And there we have that. Okay, now for the second project, I am making a pumpkin pie slice, a slice of pumpkin pie, I should say. I'm using the material that I got from Dollar Tree, and then this is a lid that I no longer have the container for, and it also is a little broken. Now I'm just using pumpkin orange by Apple Barrel to paint this slice with. This is like a slice from a log, and I'm not sure exactly how I came upon it, but I have it.
And I had originally planned to turn it into a watermelon, but whenever I went to make my sign, then I couldn't find this slice. And then later on, I mean, just a couple of days after I had finished the sign, I'm digging in my wood again, and there the slice is. So I have a feeling that this was meant to be a pumpkin pie slice all along. And now I'm going to cut the material so that I can lay, it's going to kind of be like a napkin-like kind of thing on the plate that the pumpkin pie slice is going to lay on. And I'm putting some hot glue on this rope to secure these different strands together. There's 3 strands and they were unraveling. So just put some hot glue in there to help hold them together. And I'm going to glue that around this lid that I'm going to turn into my plate. So that way it will cover up the part where the lid is broken. So I'm just going to use hot glue to secure that all the way around. Now my pumpkin pie slice, you can see the color that it is there. It's kind of darker than the pumpkin pie paint or the pumpkin orange paint. That's because the wood was dark, and I like it this color because it is a piece of pumpkin pie. If you had a lighter color of wood, you could darken it up by just adding a little bit of brown to the paint. Okay, now I have this roll of burlap, and this is what I'm going to bake my crust out of. And I'm just tracing out my pumpkin pie slice, and then I'm going to cut it out. And I'm going to use hot glue to secure the burlap to the bottom of my slice of pumpkin pie. Now to make the crust on this side at the top, I'm just going to cut a strip of burlap and just glue that right across the top. So there I'm just cutting it to about the same width that I needed to cover all the way across the top of my pumpkin pie slice. And of course, you got to have, the little crinkly crust on the top. So I'm going to cut out some thicker strips, and then I'm going to glue those onto the top. I'm going to start at the side, and then I'm just going to kind of pinch, just the same as if you were making real pie crust. I'm just going to kind of pinch it and secure it down into the hot glue. And that first piece that I used wasn't long enough, so I'm just going to cut another piece and do those same steps again. Just put some hot glue all the way across there, and then just like I was making real crust, I'm just going to pinch it and secure it into the hot glue and just hold it for a second so that it will stay in place and not lose its shape. And there we go. Now I'm going to take a piece of white ribbon, and you could also use, I've done this using white felt, so if you had white felt you could do that, or just a piece of white material. But I'm basically cutting out an awkward flower shape. It's going to have like 5 petals, but I want it to be kind of large, and it doesn't have to be symmetrical or anything like that, because you're going to put some hot glue on and then put the petals in, and you don't want it to be flat. You want it to be kind of poofy so that it looks like whipped cream. So that's how I'm putting the whipped cream on, just like that. Alrighty. It almost looks edible. Then I just stick it on my plate, and there we go. Okay, for this third project, I am making a scarecrow. I'm just going to mark off where I'm going to put the brim of the hat, and then I'm using this color. It is beige. The paints for this project are also by Vanta Story. So I'm just going to paint this all the way around, because you're going to see what I do with this later. I'm actually going to be making in this video a table riser, and so I want the other side of it to be finished as well. Okay, now I'm going to take burlap and I'm going to wrap the brim of the hat with the burlap. I'm just going to cut the piece to fit and then just secure it onto the piece of wood using hot glue. I'm not sure where this piece of wood came from either, but it was perfect for this scarecrow that I'm making here. So I didn't even have to cut a piece of wood for it. Sometimes I get lucky like that. Then I cover the sides as well. I happen to even have a little triangle piece there for that side, but the other side I didn't. So that was okay though. It's real easy to trim down once you get it on there. Okay, so now I'm going to put some of this raffia on, because I want it to peek out from under the hat, and So I thought it would be best to glue it on before I put the rest of the burlap and the brim of the hat on. That way it's poking out from underneath and none of it sticking up from, odd places or anything like that. So I just glue that using hot glue onto a little scarecrow guy here. Just cut off, different pieces, different lengths, and so that way it just looks, like a scarecrow. And now I'm going to take some more burlap and I'll use up every scrap piece I can so that way I don't have a bunch of waste. And I'm just going to glue that around the top part of my piece of 2x4 here. And then I'll just trim that off, and I'm also going to cover the top of the 2x4 because we're going to give him a complete hat. I will also be going around the back as well, and I'm also going to put him some raffia hair on the back. Okay, now that I've got all the raffia glued on, then I'm going to finish off the hat by gluing on some more burlap over top, and then I'm going to finish off on the side by gluing a piece there, and I need to do it diagonal so that it matches up with the front. Now I'm going to glue on the brim, but then I realized that my raffia that I had in the middle isn't quite long enough, so I'm going to cut some pieces that are a little bit longer and glue those down, and then I can glue the brim of the hat onto my scarecrow. I used both thick salt and hot glue to hold that on. Okay, now it's time to make my little guy's face. I'm going to use a permanent black marker to draw the eyes, nose, and mouth. I'm just drawing the outline to start with. Just making like a little triangle, kind of rounded triangle for the mouth, and then a little squig for the nose, and then a little squiggly for the mouth. And I'm also putting stitch marks on the nose and the mouth. And I'm going to use titanium white to paint the whites of the eyes and sap green to paint the iris of the eyes. You can make the eyes of your scarecrow whatever color you choose. You could also use vinyl or stickers, however you choose to make the face for your scarecrow. Then I'm going to use some of the titanium white to add a little sparkle to his eyes there using the end of my paintbrush handle. Then for the nose, I'm going to use the color Burnt Sienna. It's kind of like a brownish orange color, and I thought it was great. Instead of just using orange or anything like that, I thought this was a good color to use for my scarecrow. I also use it for my scarecrow's cheeks. Once the paint is dry, then I go back in with the permanent black marker and trace over all of the lines just to sharpen them up, also to fix places where I kind of went over with the paint and got into my lines. Now I'm going to use this black and white buffalo check ribbon, and I'm just going to cut a piece of it. It's a little too wide, so I was just cutting it almost into, not exactly into, but just to make it not as wide. And then I'm just going to glue that around the hat just to embellish it. You can use whatever kind of ribbon that you want to. You could also choose to not use ribbon. You could use rope if you wanted. The choice is yours. I'm also going to add a little sunflower. I didn't want it to be as thick as this one was. There were 3 layers, so I took it apart so that there was only 1 layer. And then I'm going to take some leaves and I'm going to cut them and then just glue parts of them on either side of the sunflower. Just like that. Okay, and there we have this cute little guy. For this project, I am making a pumpkin patch sign. I have this spindle. It was already painted green, and then a piece of 4x4, and then a piece of wood to use for my sign. First, I am taking the color Raw Umber and watering it down to paint the piece of 4x4 with. This is going to be the base of my sign. It's heavy enough that it will hold this sign up. It will be able to stand up freely on its own. So I'm just going to give it this coat. I am using some water. I'm mixing water with the paint because, like I said, the Fantastory paints are thick, and I wanted to thin it up a little bit so it looks a little more like stain. I'm going to do the same thing with the board that I'm going to be using for my sign, and I'm just going to dilute the paint a little bit, and then I'm just going to brush it on, but I'm not going to give a full coat, full thick coverage on the sign like I did the piece of 2x4, or the piece of 4x4. And then I'm going to do the same thing with white paint. This is titanium white, also by Fantastory, and I'm going to dilute it with water and go over the darker color. This is going to distress the sign and make it look weathered and old instead of like a new piece of wood. And I'm going to get that good and dry, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the spindle. There was bare spots on this. Whoever originally painted it didn't fully paint the spindle, so I just added some of the white to it to help age it as well. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the piece of 4x4, and I'm going to use a rag to help wipe some of the white paint off. Then, using a combination of Fix-All and hot glue, I am going to fix the spindle down into the hole that I have pre-drilled into the 4x4, and I'm also going to put some hot glue around where the two meet to help hold it into place even better. Now I'm going to just freehand on the words pumpkin patch and also pick your own. You can put whatever you want to on your sign. You could put a direction, like you could say pumpkin patch 5 miles with an arrow. However you choose to make your sign is fully customizable to suit your own tastes and decor. You could also, to put your letters on, you could use stencils, which was originally what I was going to do, but the letters that I used, the FALL that I used, I have misplaced them. So I no longer had my A. So I decided I'm just going to freehand it. I'm just going to freehand it all. I had washed my stencils and laid them beside the sink, but then I moved them because I was cutting up peppers to put them in the freezer. And when I am doing two things at one time, I often forget one or the other. So since I already had cutting the peppers on my mind, I have no idea where I put the stencils at the moment. They will turn up, I'm sure. Okay, and then I'm just going to use this pumpkin stencil. It's actually a jack-o'-lantern stencil, but what I do, I just stencil the jack-o'-lantern on, and then I just go back in and pounce to fill in where the jack-o'-lantern face was, and then I have a pumpkin. There we go. There's that sign. Okay, now I'm going to hammer and nail my sign to the spindle here. Just use some nails and a hammer, and we're good to go. It's on there securely. It's not going anywhere. And now around the base, I'm going to put on some of this Spanish moss, and I'm also going to put some leaves on here to help add a little bit of color and, give that little fall vibe. I used one of those leaves that I had cut part of it off to glue onto the Scarecrow. I glued it in behind the other leaf, so it looks like there's a full leaf there, but there's actually not. There's just part there. But I like to use up as much as I can so I don't have a bunch of waste. I had this ribbon left over from something that I had made before, and so I'm going to just use that on my sign. I use hot glue and a staple, both to help secure it to the wood. And then I'm going to embellish the bow a little bit using some of the leaves from the sunflower that I used on the Scarecrow, some raffia, and another leaf. Okay, now this is the last project, and I am making the table riser that I talked about whenever I was making the Scarecrow. So I'm just taking these 3 boards. You want to, wherever you're going to be putting your table riser, make sure that you are making one that is going to fit your space. So, of course, I had to measure my table first. You could make yours with just a single board if you want to, but I chose to make mine with these 3 because they were already the right size that I needed. You could also, if your table isn't very wide, you could make it just only 2 boards. So that, like I said, just make it to fit your space. And then the color that I'm using to paint the boards with is called Raw Sienna. I am diluting it a little bit with water because, like I said, these paints are very thick. And by diluting it with water, it's still going to give me nice coverage, but it's not going to take as much paint. And I also painted the boards that I use to hold them together that are going to be my feet. I painted those as well because you will be able to see them. And then I'm also going to put on some of the white paint to help distress it and age the wood a little bit. And then I just take my rag and wipe some of the paint off. Okay, let's take one final look at all of these projects.
I would fix all the problems that we made in the dark. Baby, tell me a story. I can help you tonight. You and me, we are stronger. There's no reason to worry. Let me know how you feel. Baby, this love is real. I never known anybody like you. And now you're always on my mind. I can save you from your nightmares. Just give me a little love. La 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 love. La 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 love. La 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 love. Just give me a little light. La 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 love. La 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 love. La 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 love. Just give me a little love. La 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 la. La 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 a little love. La 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 la. La 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 a little love. I would fix all the problems that we made in the dark. Baby, tell me a story. I can help you tonight. You and me, we are stronger. There's no reason to worry. Let me know how you feel. Baby, this love is real. I never known anybody like you.
Okay, that's all for this video. Don't forget to check the description for the playlist of all of the videos in the What Would You Make collaboration. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
I can save you.